Hi there. I want to do two things in this video presentation. One is to reiterate what I see as the main theological division between what I provocatively call Gnostic religion on one hand and Gnostic magic with a K on the other. That is transcendental magic, higher magics, if you like. And also, the second thing I want to do is to introduce the idea of purgatory and hell. This contemplation arises from Stefan Heuler's presentation on purgatory and hell in connection with the theology of divine mercy and prayers said for divine mercy, and the emphasis that should be placed on divine mercy within Christendom, and a development, of course, within Catholicism of the divine mercy mission, as it were, prayers for divine mercy. It got me thinking about what a Gnostic could think about purgatory and hell, actually. Anyway, the first part of this, very briefly, is that what I mean by Gnostic religion on the right-hand path, which I've shown on my left here, is that, as we already know, the classical notion is that the soul is trapped and is seeking a way out of here, by which I mean the finite lower world of the demiurge, and so the soul is perhaps reincarnating in different lives, and all those lives are desperately seeking a way out of here. And at some point in history, some point in time, salvation will be at hand. And I'm thinking here of the Rider-Waite cards, tarot cards, which often depict a large hand coming down through the clouds. And I imagine this hand literally plucking the poor unfortunate soul out of this hell, out of this purgatory, which is the lower world, and plucking the soul out of this hell, which is the lower worlds and demiurge, or even this purgatory, and delivering the soul to the ineffable realm of heaven. And that's salvation in one fell swoop, as it were. And so religion is basically waiting for this to happen, waiting for salvation to happen, whilst keeping your morality pure. Not becoming too nihilistic, being kind and compassionate and considerate of other sentient beings within this purgatory, within this hell, which is in some way a preparation for the hand that reaches down from the clouds and plucks the soul out of this particular body. So if we look at the sort of tripartite division of the soul, which is like the spirit which animates the body, the spirit that does the thinking, and soul itself. The spirit that does the thinking has to think in terms of higher things. It looks towards salvation rather than getting distracted by all the pleasantries of living in this world. And as well as that, keeping some kind of moral code, maintaining a moral code and maintaining a standard of ethics despite all the distractions and all the temptation of this world against abandoning one's ethics in the face of scarcity and threat and fear and greed and all this. So that's on one side. That's the sort of right-hand path where you do the minimum amount towards salvation. Although some people would say, well, that was that in itself, maintaining a moral code in the face of the temptations of the demiurge is no mean task. Surely that's about as active as you can possibly get. But against that, there is the left-hand path, which is what I call Gnostic magic with a K, as you know, to distinguish it from sort of stage magic, conjuring magic, and to say this is sort of like a higher transformational magic, and transformational alchemy as well would come under this. And this is where this posits or assumes that the soul is on a mission to gather as much data as it can from the lower worlds, and it comes down from the ineffable realm down into the lower worlds of the demiurge, gathers its data, and then goes back up again. So in this scenario, the soul is in command, is in charge of everything that's going on, and this is all part of the soul's mission. This is all part of the great plan. But in order to make sure this plan happens, which assumes that also the soul isn't really quite omnipotent enough to complete it on itself. Again referring to the tripartite division of soul, that is the soul itself, which is on its mission, the spirit, and the vital force which animates the body. The spirit itself is what needs to be transcended, or needs to be exposed to transcendent magics of various kinds, including alchemy, in order to make it a fit vessel for the soul to use in order to gather all the necessary data that is part of the soul's mission. So indeed, you've got to clean your vessel. You've got to strengthen your vessel for the various tasks and ordeals that it has to go through in order for soul to complete its mission, you see. And so therefore, the embodied spirit has to follow a program of a sort of hermetic program of transcendental magic in order to, as I say, in order to really to temper the steel, as it were, to use that metaphor of the sword. And so not only do you have life in this realm as it is, which is tempering enough, but you also have to put your spirit through extra ordeals of a magical kind in order to make it powerful enough to stand the mission of the soul. So this is sort of Gnostic magic, as it were, and that really takes sort of care of the first. So, but whichever you think of, I mean, if the soul is going to be plucked from the body at a point of salvation, or whether the hermetic magics are going to work and the spirit is going to be strong enough for the soul to complete its mission. What happens after death? And why is the notion of hell or purgatory still part of a Gnostic tradition? And suddenly it hit me, in fact, that hell and purgatory can be thought of as portals, or a portal itself to heaven. So this is heaven up here, as it were, the ineffable realm, and hell and purgatory are actually stages that the soul has to go through, or the spirit consciousness rather has to go through, in order finally to reach the ineffable realm. And I say this because I say this because of a very strange experience I had. Well, first of all, to explain what this hell and purgatory might be, it's a sort of stream of consciousness that the soul spirit complex, when after death, actually has to go through, or has to experience. It's a stream of consciousness which is also dependent on the complexity of the life of the particular individual. So some individuals have a very simple life, and so their experience of the stream of consciousness after death will be minimal, and will be better, as it were. The quality of that experience will be better than somebody who's lived a very complex life full of ups and downs, and who has not kept their vehicle clean, and who has not maintained an ethical code throughout their lives. They will have a very difficult time as they approach or go through the portal on the way to the ineffable realms. And the stream of consciousness, I remember, and this is sort of a thought arose from a memory I had of experience with psilocybin, where I took a great deal of psilocybin, and I had a very, very bad trip, very bad time of it. And, really, really bad. So it was like a stream of consciousness, and I was trying to control the stream of consciousness. And every time I did try to control it, what happened was that a thought would suddenly blow up or escalate into an enormous obsession, and a terrifying obsession, a terrifying sort of monster. It's like it's sort of as the stream of thought passed through me, a big little spot of thought, there'd be little thought suddenly arise, and it would suddenly kind of, as I say, escalate or magnify into a terrifying reflection of itself in my consciousness, and suddenly I'd be overcome with terror, and it was a living hell. I mean, this psilocybin trip was literally hell, and suicide seemed the only way out of this terrible situation that I was in. I mean, the essence of fear and the essence of terror was definitely felt by me at that particular time. And if it wasn't for this it's very nice guy, big guy, big, enormous guy called Big John. We called him Big Bob or something, Big John. And he was incredible. I mean, he sat down with me because I was in a really bad state, and he said, you're making a stick for your own back here. He said, what you want to do is let go of control, of conscious control, and just go with the flow, go with the stream of thought. And he went with me. He said, what are you seeing now? What are you experiencing now? And he kept asking me questions. And I gradually learned to go with the flow of the stream of consciousness. Because if I tried to control any of it, or tried to interfere or intervene in any of it, as I said, it would become monstrous and terrifying. And he was almost like a sort of psychopomp, really. He was leading me through this terrible experience. And I get reminded perhaps that Jesus is a psychopomp, and is actually leading you through. So after death, you go into the stream of consciousness, the stream of data which has been collected by the soul as a result of its embodiment and incarnation in the particular body and life of the spirit. And you enter into this state of consciousness, stream of consciousness, as spirit. And if you don't have the psychopomp there with you, and you try to control any of these experiences, you're going to have a terrible time. You're going to enter into purgatory, or even enter into hell itself, which would be rather a longer time. And if you don't have the psychopomp, if you don't have Jesus to take you through this experience, to guide you through this experience, you're going to have a terrible time. But this terrible time, this stream of consciousness experience of it, is really just a portal to the ineffable world. But you do need the psychopomp to take you through, unless, of course, you've trained to become a shaman yourself when you were embodied, when you were alive. In which case, it'll be okay for you. It'll be something which you are capable of handling. And I was sort of reminded of Huxley, who took LSD before he died. So I presume, in fact, when he died, he was tripping. And this is basically what I posit is what happens to all of us to a lesser or greater degree. That we enter into this universal stream of consciousness, which is chaotic in quotation marks, and all control is abandoned, and all control is impossible, and indeed, all control would mean that in fact that you would suffer and have terrible difficulties trying to make head nor tail of what you're experiencing, because it is just sort of random, chaotic thought. Electrical activity ceases in the brain at death, but the idea is this thought continues, but it is all in complete chaos, and it's in complete abandon. And it's just like, as I say, stream of experiences and emotions and memories, and it's a terrifying thing. It's like a torrent, really, not just a stream. And it could be for some people, because if you've led a very complex, difficult life, you would have a very difficult afterlife. And if you've led a very simple, ascetic life, then it would be just a sort of little stream of consciousness rather than a terrible great torrent. So, I mean, this is rather in itself a rather terrifying prediction of what it would be like after death. And certainly, so divine mercy comes into it, and the presence of the psychopomp as Jesus Christ in your experience of the afterlife will become crucial for you, in order to lessen the suffering and to lessen the time that in which you suffer. But after you've gone through the portal, you do reach bliss and tranquility, and you do reach a normality, a normalization of consciousness as you go through the portal.